No.
Pretty sure I had more leg room in my flight out, which was also American, but for like the regular non-upgraded seats.
All right. Well, I,
But
I don't I don't know what that life is like yet. Upgrading. I don't know if I've ever upgraded in my life. Maybe by accident. So
it
I'll
was just so me and Jackie could get seat next to each other.
got it. Got it. Alex, what's up? Thanks for coming. D5 BTK burner. Yeah, I'm just chopping it up with my friend John here. So, like any Gauss space, feel free to request up. Our space is your space. If you have questions, comments, or just want to talk about anything, hopefully somewhat on topic, but you know what I'm saying. So, scope. Let's kind of we'll start there just because you mentioned it, and then I'll jump
Yeah.
over all over the place. Talk to us about. Well, let's first paint a picture of what the festivities in Miami are. Art Basel is an event that's been going on for decades, I guess. Um, really, just home to the traditional art world, and then this Web3 space has just kind of taken that flag in the ground and created all of these extra curricular events, conferences, parties, you know, digital art gallery displays, whatever, what have you, around it. Is that fair to say for people that might not know?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right. So talk to us about.
I'm actually looking up how long it's been around right now, but Art Basel's been around for a long time, obviously. So it was started in 1970, according to Wikipedia, and it has become basically the preeminent location or like art fair for the blue chip art world outside of a Christie's or Sotheby's special auction kind of event. And because of that, all these other art galleries and art fairs have popped up to tap into that collector market that is brought down to Miami. And the event has just exploded. The whole Miami Art Week has exploded. The number of friends that I had down in Miami for the last week that are from the music and art scene in general was pretty impressive. Ran into a bunch of people that I wasn't expecting to. Saw a bunch of other people who were in town that I didn't realize were going to be there, and was never able to link up with them. But yeah, this was apparently the 20th year of the Art Basel Miami Beach, um, and yeah, I mean, it was just a lot of fun navigating and learning about how the whole big event works, seeing all the crazy things going on. But not gonna lie, the Uber infrastructure for to handle Art Week was very lacking in a lot of ways. The just general connectivity to the internet and waiting to actually get connected to a driver was a constant hassle, which I was not expecting. Apparently, Art Week is the single biggest event in Miami, which is saying a lot because I thought that, I thought there were a lot of other events throughout the year in Miami that drew big crowds, but apparently Art Week is the single biggest kind of convention type event in the city.
Uh,
So it was cool just seeing all that activity happening going down.
Totally. I think the just transportation infrastructure period, just the roads are
Yes.
not are not set up enough to handle what was happening. I mean, I had very little context of Miami, but everyone said, the Miami traffic is terrible. It puts LA to shame. And that was very evident. And then you bring in these thousands of people for this event for 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever it ended up being. And yeah, it'll be tough to hail a cab or an Uber. But I thought we did pretty well
Exactly.
with that. I thought planning and strategy, that was for planning purposes. I think we did all right for the most part.
Yeah.
So as I said, a lot of conferences. We were able to get a conference to DecentralCon at the top of last week. And do you want to speak on some of that, because that's where a lot of the talks and panel discussions were centered around a lot of what I want to talk about and a lot of what we talk about here in our Gauss ecosystem, and that's
Of course.
how do you talk to brands? How do you onboard brands? And if you're a brand, how do you talk to your consumers or customers or audience or followers or whatever you're going to refer to them as, and about this new Web3 space? We all know that Web3 is happening, but how do you talk to people about it? And that's kind of an ongoing conversation with our staff here in our Discord. and I'm just like to get your 2 cents how you saw it as you listen to panels and experts on that issue.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a number of years of experience going to tech trade shows and seeing how different tech companies are set up to introduce or discuss current hot button issues and the trends within a space. This was my first time doing an event in the crypto sector, and it was a lot of fun. My last job for the last over a decade was in the healthcare IT space. So we would always be talking about what are the big issues in public health, what are the big issues around patient privacy and data privacy, and rights ownership around the data that you have as a patient or a consumer within the healthcare ecosystem. And going down to Basel was really interesting because it was more about just life and fun and creativity and that side of the world. So it was definitely a very different vibe than I was used to. And it's a much newer and more immature market. So it was a much smaller event overall. Um, but yeah, I mean, the big takeaway from Decentral, well, two big takeaways. One, I got my grounding in terms of what the topics are. And by the end, as I have experience with other tech trade shows, the conversations were getting a little redundant on the panels, but the conversations that you have in the halls and that you have one-on-one were always valuable. And so I'm really excited to have a little bit more time to prepare and get more meetings set up for next cycle so that we have more of those one-on-ones when we're actually on site and, we're not just kind of bouncing from session to session, absorbing the materials that are being discussed. One of the big takeaways, though, from those sessions was exactly what you were talking about. It's like, how do you actually get brands and fans and consumers to onboard into Web3 when you're also kind of fighting against the mass media narrative that everyone's hearing, which is just full of the scammers and all the DeFi nonsense. One of the things that was really obvious talking to the creatives and the people doing NFT projects and the community leaders is that none of them give a shit about DeFi. Am I allowed to swear on this, by the way? Is that is that acceptable?
Yes.
Okay.
I just checked with Alex Chan down there, and he says it's okay.
Fantastic. Yeah, so they don't care at all about what's going on in DeFi. And I think that's one of the big takeaways for me is that we need to shift this conversation as much as we can as a community away from what's going on in DeFi. DeFi was the initial kind of foundational principle of Bitcoin, but not all of blockchain. Like Bitcoin is a proof of concept around store of value, right? Everyone knows that now. But what we can do with blockchain technology goes so much beyond DeFi and speculation. And that's what we really need to be focusing on as a community and getting that message across to people that are hesitant or resistant to this shift in the technology. And one of the big takeaways from from Miami Art Week is to do that, we need to stop talking about Web3 as separate from Web2, other than now you can have digital ownership of your assets. Like that's the only thing that we really need to kind of still be discussing from a Web3 context. But if we're going to get mass adoption, I think this has been a pretty common discussion thread across anybody that's covering the space and is actually kind of covering specifically the NFT and creator community or creator economy, is that DeFi isn't the story anymore. It's how are you activating your community? How are you creating experiences that are tied to digital ownership? How are you creating both, like bridging the digital communities and bringing them to real IRL events? And you had a really good proof case with the VFriends events that we went to. Like that was a really fun use case that I got to participate in because of your membership within that community. So thank you for giving me that perspective.
Totally. And I just and you just said a lot that I want to unpack a little bit. But when we say that, and this was said many, many times, many different ways, are you going through a car wash outside of your car?
No, I
What's
was just
happening?
getting some water. Got a little dry mouth.
Okay, are you okay?
Yeah, no, I just got a little dry mouth. I'm
No,
going to mute myself while I do that.
no, I'm just messing with you. But this, like you said, it was a theme. It was said many different ways. Like no one cares about DeFi, no one cares about the metaverse. That doesn't mean that no one actually cares, right? I know we have a lot of people in our community in this space that really are into DeFi and into the metaverse, and it's very important. But when we say that, and it's with the undertone of talking to the public, right? The public, Joey public, doesn't care how the internet works. He just wants his Wi-Fi signal to work so he can do what he needs to do, right? Someone made an interesting metaphor with purchasing a freezer, right? You don't care about the compression of how fast your water is turning to ice, right? You just want ice. So
Exactly.
that's kind of the meat and potatoes of what we're talking about, with in terms of bringing on talking to the public. But yeah, you hit the nail right on the head, and we are using a lot of jargon, right? And we don't even notice that we're doing it because it's just our world, right? And it's just so second nature to us. Something as simple as wallet or NFT, and like you alluded to, the media has kind of taken all of these scams and stories and kind of situated them in a negative connotation, which kind of people that don't have as much context on the space look at and say, oh, I don't need any of that. So it just kind of ignites those feelings and emotions when we say things like NFT or wallet. So a big takeaway to kind of go along with what you said was we need to lose the jargon. We need to make it feel just like Web 2. How do you onboard people to Web3? You make it feel just like Web 2. So one thing that stuck out was just the usage of the credit cards to get tokens, to get crypto. That was a big one for me.
Yeah, so exactly. So traditional fiat currency being leveraged more frequently, making the onboarding process more simple. I mean, heck, a lot of people that we spoke to, and you and I spoke about this obviously on site, I was expecting a lot more pushback to us being a permissioned, kind of centralized ecosystem, but so many people there, especially at Decentral, which is ironic considering that the name is Decentral, were all about what we're trying to build with this curated platform, where they can push their fans and feel like it's a bit safer, and something like that can create the more mass market trust that we need as an industry. And those people, once they get some experience with us and feel safe and have a little bit of the learnings down, they can go and explore the decentralized world and see what's going on out there. But having something that they can rely on and trust to get their feet wet is going to reduce a lot of that fear and a lot of that resistance that we're currently seeing today.
100%, 100%. And one of the conversations that we've had so many times, I've had it with you and Mac and Gary, was okay. If we're creating written content or video content, or we're just talking to anyone, and we know NFT is kind of getting to be, if not a bad word right now. What do we call it? And a lot of the speakers and panels brought that up all week, and there are a lot of people threw digital collectible around, and nothing really hit for me until the end of the week when we were at Nifty Gateway, put on by NFT Now. And if you don't know NFT Now, they're a great little media outlet that does podcasts and a blog and a lot of different things, just educating about the whole space. And someone that is on the team with Steve Aoki doing his Aoki verse, which is kind of an all-inclusive, membership through his NFTs to access to him and what he's putting out. She used the phrase digital membership, which I really like because people are used to the phrase digital and they're of course used to the phrase membership. And that really stuck for me. Um, was there one way that someone put it, or one way that you heard that kind of rung a bell for you to
Honestly,
talk
I
to
like what you've
talk
been.
to the layman?
Yeah, honestly, I like what you've been proposing internally and just kind of the access pass. That's tied to you as a human, you as an individual. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going around in kind of reframing things that way, and obviously it sets things up really effectively for the NFT ticketing and some of these other real world experience things that the digital Web3 ecosystems can unlock.
Yeah, I mean, unpacking and really trying to get deep. If we can talk about what we're doing at Gauss or even just in the space at large without having to explain what anything is, with no commas, I think that's the winning formula,
100%.
because bring it back to Web 2. Like, everyone knows what Web 2 is now. We've been there long enough. Even someone like my mother, who's been on Facebook for, you know 10 years or 8 years or 7 years, I don't know. It's they're natives now, so let's really play on that.
I don't know. Are you
One of
in
the
any of
quotes
the
that
boomer groups on Facebook?
probably.
Because even some of the people that are, quote unquote natives, because they've been on long enough, still seem to struggle with Facebook.
Oh, of course. My mom has two Instagrams,
Nice.
just because, that's that's another story. Also, moving on, one of the quotes, just while we're on this topic, that stuck out was, someone quoted someone else. I don't know who originally said it, but the quote is, "We're trying to onboard the first 1 billion people way too fast,"
Yes.
which I thought was really cool and telling, because all the conversations are around, how do we get these people, how do we get my customers in, how do I get these people to understand, rather than just kind of organically doing your thing and building slowly, whatever. So I thought that was neat.
Yep. And to that point, onboarding a billion people, the internet existed for well over a decade before it became mass market adoption. Email was around in in the late 70s when the first things were made, or the early 80s. And it wasn't until mid late 90s when the internet really became the de facto way of us engaging around the world. So when you look at crypto, it's easy to get hung up on, oh, this one project, it's been around for so long, but it hasn't had adoption. But that's because this is an entirely new sector of technology. And that's what needs to get the mass adoption for any of these companies to follow traditional business timelines. And the traditional startup timeline. Right now, everything is under high scrutiny because it's so exposed, it's so public. And so if something doesn't hit in as quickly as people want, and especially when you see these bull runs, people get turned off from it, and they feel like they've been exploited or lied to, which is obviously no way to build the community. I think it's also just getting back to setting realistic expectations about what can be done around switching the protocols, switching how people interact with their computers on a consistent basis.
Mm, totally. Totally. Yeah. So it was really nice to take a backseat, to have the really intense conversations with people and make the connections, like you said, in the hallway, and trying to see how we at Gauss can provide value, or we as an individual can provide value for someone, and vice versa.
Yep.
But I also like just kind of sitting back passively and just kind of taking it in, and just trying to tweak my framework, and, thinking back to when I was trying to understand the space, and just looking at the big picture. Um, big, just, I want to put out there. If anybody has an opportunity to go to any in person, in real life, IRL events on any of these topics, specifically the ones you're passionate about in the space, I highly recommend it. Even if it doesn't have to be a big conference in another city, but even as something as small as a meetup in your city or your town.
Well, you've had a lot of
Um,
luck with that in Charleston, right? Like your local
I
NFT
have.
and crypto community is pretty active beyond just talking about, what's the next shit coin to make a bunch of money on.
Right. I have. And that was just kind of by happenstance through Twitter, where I found a Discord where they have monthly meetup groups, and I've made friends there, and I actually saw some friends this past week from there.
Yeah, and
So I definitely look out for that. Do some, if for anyone listening, do some research on Twitter. Use that search, or Google Eventbrite. I know a lot of people put Eventbrite, but it's just, you never know where the next handshake is going to lead, the next meeting is going to lead. So just wanted to throw that out there as a value
yeah,
prop.
I mean, you were there for one of my favorite experiences from the week, which was when we were at the unofficial VFriends takeover, and we were just kind of doing the networking thing, meeting people. And there were two people from the ATX, which is, I moved to Austin area recently, and I've been trying to get more tapped into the crypto community. And that was just a really super organic, nice way to meet someone from my local crypto community. And now I'm going to start going to the ATX style events. The guy I met, he's going to make sure that I'm on the list for the next NFT drop for membership and everything like that.
Yeah, I love that, and I was really happy that you were able to experience that. Obviously there's dozens of communities that through parties and events and whatever on top of any of these big events, but VeeFriends is the one that I wasn't that introduced me to the space. So I gravitated towards it, and I really got a sense of good community right from the get from there. And you guys have heard me talk community before. I'm looking at some of the names that are in here, and you know how important it is, and it's true.
Yeah.
And John goes to this thing. He's not a holder, right? He didn't know anyone there aside from me, but he was welcomed with open arms, just as a human, right? And you got to do some fun things like play the compete and collect game, which is like a war. And by the way, those boxes that we're opening, they were like $300 a pop.
What? Okay.
So
I didn't
yeah,
realize
depending on which rarity, it's like, yeah, like 300, 400, 500 bucks pop. So compete and collect is like a war game, like war like king over queen,
that.
but except with the VeeFriends characters. So he got to do that, and they had raffle, and there was break dancing, and there was a guy selling cigars, and giving cigar education. Just kind of, we talk about utility and value all the time, and the utility here was just people, not only a fun party, but just people kind of helping each other and networking, and eating and drinking, and you know what else was there? There's a lot there.
There was a lot. We got to meet those chefs who we ran into at a couple of the other events throughout the week. The ones that were providing the banana pudding, and they're on Hell's Kitchen. Um, there were two of the people that got a perfect score on one of the judging rounds, and there were only two on the show. So
Yeah.
that was fun to hear their story and learn more about what they're doing and how they want to kind of integrate the Web3 ecosystem into their own branding and their own visions. And getting back to the VFriends event, I think that for me, introduce that community, seeing how people united around Gary and joined the community because of what he stands for and kind of the values that he's put out into the world, that his followers respond to and are kind of drawn into. I think that shows that when you're building these communities, it's really important to build them around the morals, the ethos, the kind of the sacred elements of what that brand or what that entity is all about. Because that's why your fans flock to those groups, right? And that's the community that you want to cultivate, are the ones that align with those values and those kind of core tenets of what that icon or that personality or that brand represents and is known for.
I totally. I couldn't have said it better myself. And it's so true. It's so important. And our Gary here at Gauss believes in that, and I love that. How I see it trickling down. But for Gary V, and at another event the next day, I've met Gary V before, but I got to thank him and tell him the story, which is absolutely true. And I wouldn't be here today without that ethos trickling down in his universe. So he obviously puts out, kindness and helping everyone. And his kind of right hand man, his videographer. If you know who Gary V is, he has an abundance of content because he has a cameraman following him around at all times. And generally, that guy is a guy named D Rock. So D Rock kind of learned Gary V's ethos of helping people. So he often tweets out on his LinkedIn and Twitter, how can I help you? What do you need from me? And a lot of people will comment. So one day he did it on Twitter. I think it was more specific to who was looking for work, or how can I help you get a job or something. And I follow him, so I replied, and nothing happened from it for a while. But this guy named Mac, who's in the chat right now, sleep smoker, saw my comment, connected with me, and here I am a few months later at Gauss. So like that's how it works.
Yep, one of the
All
faces of
because,
Gauss, no less. Not just working for us, but actually one of the kind of public faces of the business.
well, I guess so. But
Hey, you're monitoring this,
but
right?
but yeah, but the point is like it really trickles down, and I was happy to thank Gary in person and D-Rock for that, and obviously they both appreciated that story because it's nice to hear about the ripples you make from your waves. So awesome, yeah. So I to tie the bow on that kind of chapter, it was really cool to have you see that. But like that was an unofficial event, like that
Yep.
was just the community. So we have a lot of loyal, devoted Gaussians in here. So
But that's also what you want, right? You want that community to also, like, you do your events, but you also, if you're successful at community building, the community takes on a life of its own that represents your values and represents what you're out there for, and it just kind of self-manages, self-regulates, ideally. So I thought that that unofficial one was a really good proof point. Well,
absolutely, absolutely. Your community is a reflection of what's happening on the team.
yep.
Any other quotes, any other talking points, bullet points that kind of jumped out at you from either from the stance of bringing on brands, talking to brands, or anything under the umbrella of what we're doing here? Security.
Um, hmm. I mean, there was a lot to absorb. There were a lot of different good conversations. So I could take that in any number of ways in theory. I don't think that anything else is jumping out at me right now. I think there was just a lot of excitement about this being a build period. Like, who cares that it's crypto winter right now? Once all the DeFi nonsense is sorted out, like these NFT communities, these areas, just the brand and kind of icon projects, they're going to come back. Gary said it really well when he was on stage at the actual interview at Scope. He's just saying, these are things that he's planning on being part of and owning for years. He doesn't care about crypto winter. Yeah, maybe he spent a little bit too much money and he could have waited on certain things based on the actual dollar value, exchange to whatever token. But at the same time, we're all, if you're in this for the right reasons, you're going to be a long-term holder. You're going to be in the communities for a while. And so these month to month, maybe year fluctuations in the token value or the coin value shouldn't be what dictates whether or not you join in and become part of these communities.
I totally agree. You would never know. You would really never know, and think popping your head into any event or talk what the status of the market at large was if you were listening in.
Yeah.
Because people were they're there for the long haul. They're building and creating. Of course, there's investing going on, but you can't play that short term game all the time, and you're gonna go crazy or worse
Yep.
if you do that. So really, really good point.
And if anything, this chills that secondary market that prevents people that really want to be part of a community from coming in because prices get too high too quickly. So ideally, this will help give people a little bit more runway and a little bit more opportunity to get into these communities at prices they can afford if they're not just wealthy already and have a bunch of disposable income.
Yep, exactly. I think if you're only in this for the short term investing, I think you're missing out on a much bigger opportunity,
Yeah, not that there
especially
aren't
if you're
opportunities there, but yeah, absolutely. Like, there's just so much more that can be done.
especially if you're in it and engaged at this juncture,
Yep.
because we're at the top of the first inning right now,
Yeah, exactly.
and the game's just about to start.
Yeah, somebody else commented that, Bitcoin's been through what, 3, 4 cycles now since it first came out. Ethereum's been through 2 to 3. NFTs have only had one actual cycle. So, this was the first bubble that burst. And, now we can build with a little bit lower fees, a little bit less pressure. And it also filters out a lot of the bullshit projects so that people can, kind of see which ones have staying power, which is really important.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have gone, and this is really it also has kind of helped me open up my my scope of people in the space that I want to follow, that I want to read. I want to read their Twitter or their LinkedIn or their mediums, or follow them on any of the social media accounts, because there's a lot of smart people out there. And an event like this, just you see a lot of people. Every talk has 2, 3, 4, 5 people on a panel, and you hear their flavor and how they deliver things, and their intellect and what they bring to the table, and it
Okay.
really helps broaden your network.
Yeah, can we just talk about how bad the format of the sessions was real quick? Because I hope that I don't know if they'll actually listen to this, Spaces recording later, but it'd be really nice if next year the sessions were a little longer so that the conversations could get a little bit deeper into the weeds and allow for audience participation, audience questions. Because at a certain point, it just felt like there were too many sessions. They started to get redundant, and it would have been really nice to be able to go longer live with the panel, as opposed to trying to hit up one speaker after the session, just get some time with them to ask your, more detailed, specific question that you wanted to get out of that, that panel theme.
I agree for Decentral. NFT Now did a much better job. But here, and
Yes.
I've never worked at a conference, but I think from talking to some people, I think what they do is some of these conferences try to pack as many panelists as possible and invite them. They're honored, especially if they normally don't do this. They give them promo codes, and to tell all of their followings, and to sell more tickets. If you have more hosts to the party, you're gonna have more people to the party. So I think by doing that, they had way too many talks. That's why we're seeing many of the same themes,
Yep.
and obviously run out of time. So yeah, I agree, because in a 25-minute talk, by the time you really settle into the talk, you're 10 minutes in, and by the time people are really starting to open up and speak, second, third level material, getting deeper, it's time to go. So I
Exactly.
totally agree. So, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
I
sorry to
think
derail things.
that's no, that's a good piece of feedback for Decentral, and I'm sure I will tag them. I'm sure they're here for it. I would like to know how many tickets are sold at these things. I know that they do a lot of comps and a lot of, like I said, promotion. If John Moore is the speaker, use the John Moore promo and to get 50 or 60% off.
Yep.
And it just gets more people in the door. Give us something off of what we're talking about. Give us, what did you eat? Give us a piece of Miami
Oh
that
my God.
you either were surprised about, enjoyed. Give a reason for Mac to come next time.
So I kind of forgot how much Miami is like a fashion metropolis, high end like place like LA or New York. I kind of forgotten about that vibe that the city has, and what that translates to is a lot of really fun fashion, and people that are very much owning their style. But it also led to some fantastic food. You and I went out to that Dolores, but you can call me Lolita rooftop restaurant, and that was just fantastic food. Jackie and I last night before we left, we went to this restaurant over on Miami Beach. There was another rooftop spot, and it was just this phenomenal Cuban-inspired food. I think even the cheap places that I ate at were still pretty damn good. So the food experience was great. Um, and something else, I've spent a little bit of time in Wynwood, and just all of the murals, all of the public art down in Miami was like, I love it when cities have a real focus on art being part of the culture and part of the city's branding. And so public art is obviously a big piece of that. And literally every building surface in the Wynwood district is covered with murals. And that was just so much fun to see all that vibrancy and creative energy there.
I couldn't agree more. The food was on point. My last meal before I left, I had to get to like a authentic um, food truck like
Okay.
some nice Mexican food. So I did that, did all the things. But I was telling John this, guys. I'm half joking when I say this. I'm pretty sure my 2012 Subaru Forester that hasn't been washed in at least 9 months would have gotten pulled over and trying to enter Miami, because I mean the people are beautiful, but the cars. I'm not a car guy, but like here's just every 4.5 feet there's a Rolls Royce or just a
A
Lambo just
Ferrari. Yeah.
casually pulled over. Never mind, and I'm not even talking about like you walk into every place, and every place has valet with the nicest cars you've ever seen. There, I'm just talking, just randomly walking. But yeah, you didn't see too many of too many dirty Subarus. So
No, definitely
that
not.
was. I'll definitely fly in again next time instead of driving.
Yeah, I remember that from my first time in Miami is just seeing all of the Porsches and all of the other high end like Lambos, like you said. And I was just floored that first time. And I was expecting it this time, but it was still a very crazy reminder of just how much money is floating around there. And a lot of that's also because there's a lot of exotic car rental companies down there. So that's part of why there's so many high end vehicles. But at the same time, by that same token, I mean, a lot of people do own the cars too.
So I just want to extend it and invite. I know a lot of people like to write in questions. I actually should check that out. But if you guys want to jump up, ask a question, say what's up, feel free to do that. And while you're thinking about potentially doing that, John, so going into 2023 for Gauss, talking to potential partners that may want to launch with us, or thinking about someone like me, like how do we position content? What is something that is on your radar now after this trip that may have not been before?
I think coming up, I mean, it was already on my mind, but just coming up with a common lexicon that the non-crypto natives can understand and gather around to start getting them onboarded, getting some more bigger name projects. You know what Nike is doing with Artifact, what Starbucks is doing with their rewards program. These are all very big brands making big moves to onboard their customers into this space. Um, Something new. I think the digital fashion, that was something that I kind of wrote off as not being as big a deal as a lot of people in the event and throughout the week really made it seem. So I thought that was a really interesting subspace within the overall crypto world that I had kind of written off as being, a fun thing, but not that big a deal. But then, yeah, I actually saw one of my friends post a screenshot of one of his games. I don't know if it was Call of Duty or something else, but he had all these digital assets that were tied to the game that were, you could sell them in the open market for $1,500, $2,000. And I think that digital fashion, that Artifact and Nike deal, and some of these other companies that are developing that shouldn't be written off and should really be looked at as a very strong and compelling reason to onboard the masses. You get to customize your digital avatars. We've all got these digital avatars on Facebook now, but it's very limited what you can actually do. So, if you can make it more representative of how you want to present to the world, I think a lot of people will buy into that a lot more than I initially gave credit to.
Yeah, really great points. Fashion is such a colossal industry, huge. Just I'm not even going to put a figure on it. It's because I'm going to just totally misquote it, but there's a lot of money in fashion.
Many
And
billions.
of course, it's going to trickle in. And yeah, people, Gary Vee says this all the time. People communicate most with what they buy.
Yep.
End of story. Whether it's the cars that we were just talking about, or watches or clothes, that's how they communicate to the world.
Yeah.
And now with your PFP, obviously, the more people are looking at your PFP than your actual face or your car. So it just makes a ton of sense. Going to circle back, my squirrel brain, whatever Starbucks, we've talked about this. Starbucks is coming out with their rewards program and NFT for their their holders or customers, whatever they call it. I would put a lot of stock into that, like whatever verbiage they use.
Yeah.
I know I liked Access Pass and digital membership, but whatever they're actually going to call the thing, we should Sharpie circle that and highlight it.
All the big brands, whatever they end up pushing as far as the narratives and the talking points, I think that's going to be what starts to trickle out into the mainstream. Because I don't know what Nike's going to call theirs. I know that right now they're calling it, their digital assets or something like that. But all the artifact stuff. I heard on Overpriced JPEGs the other day, they're saying that Nike apparently plans to double their total revenue just through digital assets. I mean, this is a massive consumer packaged goods company, like retail company, that makes billions of dollars every year on their sale of actual tangible physical assets, and they think that they can double that sale volume and that revenue in the digital space. So I don't know where they're getting those numbers. It definitely seems inflated to me, but hey, I'm sure that they have some good people that have some rationalization behind how they got there.
That's really interesting and very telling.
Yep.
Very telling. John, you're doing a pretty good job. We should do more things like this together.
I got enough rest last night.
Usually, Alex, I love Alex. Alex is feeling under the weather today, but thank you for being on, Alex. Love Alex, but I'm liking the vibe you're bringing here, and I'm sure I'm looking at 801 listeners in the room. I'm sure all 801 of them are really enjoying what you're putting out too.
Well, I hope so. Feel free to follow me. I'm at J3More on Twitter here. So if anybody has any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out.
J3More, at J3More, at Gauss Gang, at Quasar Fest.
Yes, that one too. I mean, just on a little personal note, that was a lot of fun too. Eventually the festival that my wife and I own would come up in conversation. People love that we're trying to engage the Web3 community and do some Web3 education at that event, specifically to help creators make more informed decisions about whether or not to participate in these new ecosystems. Because I think there's a lot of knee-jerk reaction right now from the people in my community, at least, that, screw NFTs, this is just dumb digital stuff. You can still right click, save the art. And they're missing some of those bigger points about how you can activate your fans, how you can engage your audiences in more meaningful ways. And, as Seth Godin always says, all you need is 1,000 dedicated fans to make a living as a creator, if you know how to monetize, right, and know how to provide value to those fans. And so I think that a lot of people are writing this off prematurely because they see the mass market narratives and all of these DeFi scams and people getting ripped off. And there just hasn't been enough broad education about what happens in the blockchain beyond speculation investing, like we were talking about earlier.
I like that. I've never heard that quote from him. I know a lot of Seth Godin, but I like that.
Yeah, it's one of his key tenets. Yeah, I mean, he's even said you can have as low as 100 dedicated fans in today's day and age, and you can still make your money. That's dedicated fans. So that's going beyond just your passive engagers. These are people that are going to go out there and help evangelize your brand and tell their friends, word of mouth, spread your brand to other people. But you need that core that's always going to stay with you and want to buy every new thing that you release, every new song that you produce. That kind of content collector is what you really need to survive as a creator. And the NFT space and the blockchain space can open up a whole lot of new avenues. A lot of my friends do Patreon. I've got some music producer friends that is part of the Patreon. If you're a subscriber there, you get sample packs every month that you can use in your own audio production. And so that's a great model, but I think that there's even more that can be done beyond just the basic subscription it's kind of one way, you get your money and you produce something for your followers. I think that these access tokens and the opportunity to have access to secondary royalties opens up a whole lot of new and interesting models that people can leverage and really own their brand a lot more directly than what's been possible in the past, where you really need to go through the gatekeepers and the more central organizations to get that exposure and get that access to the market.
Yeah, John, we're gonna have to do a weekly spot. You're bringing the heat.
I
You're
do what I
bringing the
can.
heat.
I do what I can.
You
As you know,
know,
I've got a
to
lot of interest in a lot of varied areas, so it's fun to kind of see how they all
yes,
interweave and come together.
I got somewhere between like 1.9 to like 3.6% smarter just by talking with John for the whole week. Very well versed in many things. Um, so
Sometimes
my
ADHD is a blessing, sometimes it's a curse.
one of my a thesis I have about Gauss is I think to your point with the following thing. I think this is going to be an ecosystem for more of those kind of influencers. Someone that has 300 to 1,800 really dedicated followers that are going to create a token, and they're going to come to here to this community to be onboarded and kind of we'll just kind of take them in uh, because this is such a warm community. So that's kind of under the radar, not under the radar now because I'm saying it, but in my head, I think we're going to attract a lot of those. Obviously, the big, huge partnerships are great, but I think the long tail of it is to have people that have a more intimate relationship with their community already is going to want to say they're going to go above and beyond to want a safe ecosystem to onboard them when it comes time to do their token. So we'll see how that ages. We'll see how that comment ages, but that's my thoughts.
Precisely.
What do you think about that? Are you a buyer or seller of that thesis?
Oh, I definitely support it. I mean, I think a lot of what I've said today aligns with what you just said.
Totally. I think our core community is just ripened for that. Like we have such an awesome welcoming committee. Like the people they're here, the pandas, the Sean's, the Z's, the Ozazes. Um, you know, it's hard to enter the Discord and not feel like you're gonna feel welcomed or educated. So that's that. That's that. John, you've been amazing for here. Oh, I have a question here in the Discord from Ferret. What was the so he asked originally if I got any cool mugs or shirts, and my answer was I did. I don't know if you got this, John, but they had a really cool, I think, really limited swag bag at the NFT Now Gateway, and usually it's like like a keychain or something, like whatever sticker. But they had a hoodie, like a legit good quality hoodie in there.
Oh, damn, I didn't get that.
Yeah, it wasn't all the time. It was a random box that was half full. So I got
Okay.
that, and then they had so the NFT Gateway was they roped off literally like a 2 blocks in Miami, and they were kind of empty storefronts that they had all of these different activations. So one of the stores was an Instagram and Meta, and they had all cool digital art throughout there. They had people from Meta and Instagram talking about what they got going on. The next one was art blocks, and they had their gallery, and then they had G Money, what's his like nine something DC. G Money does
Yeah,
like
9DCC.
yeah 90DC, and then they had the list goes on, and they had a merch one where if you just filled out a Google form for MetaMask, just kind of linking your wallet and opting into their newsletter or not, then they gave you a cool T-shirt, and again, good quality. So I got a cool T-shirt. But his follow up question was, "What was the best thing I ate?" Which is really tough. The two great things I ate. One was an oxtail. I've never had oxtail. I had an
I'll take
oxtail
credit for that one.
taco. Yes, push me toward it. That and with the cornbread. And my thing is, if you go to a restaurant and they have one appetizer available and that's it, like that's what they specialize in. It doesn't matter what it is, you get it. So at this particular restaurant it was the cornbread, which was fantastic. And the other thing is, I coincidentally I've never really tried banana pudding because I don't traditionally like banana flavored things, although I like bananas. But at this V Friends party we went to, this world renowned chef who was on the show was making banana pudding. So I tried it and it was amazing. But to to double down on that, you know, there's a big there's an high intersection of people that are interested in cannabis and Web3. So when I ordered my banana pudding, he asked if I wanted like a cannabis like CBD like sauce topper, and I thought he was joking at first, and he's like, no, like it's real CBD. So that you could have a CBD topper as well. So regardless, it was amazing. So those are the two best things I ate. Did you
Yeah, I
have the
would
CBD
say
topper?
I did. I did. It was tasty. You can't even really taste that specifically, the additive. As far as the food, oh man. Yeah, I mean, everywhere I ate was really good. We went to this one place called Crudos in the Wynwood design area, and that was a fantastic dining experience. Jackie got the salmon. It actually came out on a little box with a coal in it, so it's still being actively smoked at the table. So, just little flourishes like that that are totally unexpected that add to the whole dining experience was a lot of fun. So definitely recommend Crudos if anyone is out in the Wynwood area. And then for merch giveaways, I grabbed some t-shirts. That was about it for me as far as the free goodies. The first day that we went in, we had a talk with Tatum, and they had these fantastic morning Danishes, and that was really nice. A good way to start the whole week off. But as far as swag, I mean, it was just nice t-shirts for the most part. Got some fun stuff at the Gary event. Got that hat, got some of those cards.
Oh yes,
Um,
that's right, the hat.
yeah, but definitely drove home to me that when we start having our own side events there, it'll be really fun to think through what are some creative, unique, and valuable giveaways. Like, maybe I'm not going to give away any ideas on this call actually, but
Okay,
definitely some fun things there.
no leaking.
Um, exactly.
Yeah, the
Um,
first Gauss Gang official party, unofficial, whatever you're gonna call it, is gonna be great.
for all the
Um,
Ferro holders.
we have to. I want to start wrapping it up here, but we Decentricon, you kind of fudded on it before. We went to the official. It was deemed the official Decentricon party, and we got there like an hour late. And we got there's nothing going on. Like there was a stage set up, but there's nothing going on. There was a bar that was not, like, no one was at it. There's no evidence of things happening at the bar, and there was just cans all over. There was empty Bud Light cans, and I was like, this can't be the only thing happening here. Like, there's no water. But lo and behold, there was nothing happening at this party. No open bar, no, a cash bar came later, but it was very strange. There
They brought
was
out 12 packs of Miller Lite at one point.
it was yes, it was. Think back to your college, if you're old enough to have college be the glory days. It was, yeah, empty 12 packs around, but it was the most peculiar thing. Like, is someone at the bar? Are they not? Is it a cash bar? So in my head, I was like, all right, whenever we do something, I know exactly what not to do. Is
Yes.
as far as a party or social gathering for our community and guests. But
Yes.
it was an awesome trip. So I'm so blessed to have the opportunity, and thankful to Gary and the team, and I'm pumped that you were able to go. And I'm just riding high. Like, it took me a couple days to kind of get back, situated, see the family. But now I'm just riding high. I went on a heater. I saw a bunch of well known people in the space at the Gateway.
Got to
I
say hi
got
to people.
I got to say what's up to Beeple. Got a picture with him. Frankie D Gods not only took a picture with me, but he just retweeted it today. So I'm just riding high. My head's super big right now, and I just feeling good. And I'm really gonna. It was nice to, like I said, kind of take a step back. I threw a lot of my content ideas out the window, and we're going simple and we're going big in 23.
Facts. I'm looking forward to it. Well, I got to jump. This was a lot of fun. Definitely
Yeah,
enjoyed sharing my takeaways.
I'm gonna wrap up. I can't thank you guys enough hanging out with us. Like I said, I'm in comms with the couple guests. I might try to do it this week. Our future of ticketing, which I'm really pumped about, but it might likely be next Monday at the same time slot to keep it simple. But look out for those announcements. And yeah, thanks, John.